Hi, everyone. My name is Liz Perez, and today you're joining us on our discussion regarding affordable housing solutions and grant solutions, all in one. And we have amazing speakers today. We have Rick Dela Cruz, who is the Community Relations Director for West Wind Memory Care. And we have Sedale Turbovsky with opengrants.com. And gentlemen, you're here. I know today's segment, it's from 7 to 8, but I think it's really important that we kind of get straight to the point on things, right? And kind of make it not so much solving all the world's problems, but really taking a look at giving some really important information on affordable housing solutions that it's already being done here within San Diego County and throughout our state. And we can actually do that here within Vista. And then also talk about the different grants that are available as well. Also within our county, I think it's really important. And Rick, he can dive more into that. And before we do, I just wanted to go ahead and start this off. But as everybody knows, throughout our state, it's not a secret, affordable housing is an issue. And also homelessness is an issue. And along with that, some of the things that I found as a candidate in running for this election is that when people think, not all people, but many that I've talked to, they want to solve that issue, but they also, when I say they, voters and just general population, when they think of affordable housing, they think of it as not as attractive, and they don't want it in their neighborhoods. And I think it's important that we do take care of our community, and we'll talk about how to solve these problems holistically. And I think a great way to start off that conversation is introducing Rick Dela Cruz. And I'd love for you, Rick, to just talk a little bit about your background and also describe some examples of other cities that are tackling this issue of affordable housing and also addressing homelessness. And it doesn't always have to be an eyesore when tackling it and taking a look at it from that view.
Well, thank you. Again, I'm Rick Dela Cruz. I also am a naval veteran like you. And
Go Navy.
Yes. Over the years, I've worked with several redevelopment agencies, particularly the city of San Jose and Santa Barbara, where beyond economic development, we also had a very strong affordable housing program. Unfortunately, that was one of the major strengths of California during the redevelopment days, but those days are now over, which you're probably very familiar. And now we need to rely more heavily on the private sector as well as the nonprofit group. By coincidence, I'm also on the board of directors for Habitat for Humanity Monterey Bay, and we are tackling not only affordable homes for families, but also temporary housing for the homeless. We're working with the church group. And on a tangent, some really interesting work has been done by the city of San Jose and the Silicon Valley community, where they have taken excess state highway property and they built homeless camps on it. City of Riverside has taken a wonderful park and have done the same thing. And in each of those cases, they were community partnerships. So folks came in, volunteered their time. 1 hour of anybody's time is significant money if you had to replace it with typical funding sources. So the other subtlety is the governor has made a real commitment to start looking for solutions. One of the ones he's really emphasizing, and one I really like, is ADUs, which are auxiliary residential units. They have become a possible solution for seniors to help them age in place, where they could build an ADU, either stay in their home or move into the ADU and rent the other item out for regular income. There's a program called My House, My Home, which we can talk about later, but more and more communities are looking in that direction. And there have been some new legislation that has allowed single-family home zoning districts to begin to open up to ADUs. One last very important point. Whatever a city decides to do, they need to do it with their community, with their industries, with their nonprofits, with people who really want to help, and a good group are veterans. So no city can do it by itself without a organized effort at doing such. I know I'm mumbling through it, but hopefully that made sense.
No, absolutely. It absolutely makes a ton of sense. And I'm so glad that you brought up the fact that we cannot solve these issues without involving our community. And along with that, I think it's important to note that, in terms of our community, that we can also tackle, things on an economic level, like creating jobs for our local workforce here. And also writing in different types of policy that there's a mandate that also there is a must include local workforce and local business, right? And also veterans as well, and women in business, and so on and so forth, underserved populations that are involved in these type of community projects. So much can be solved there. And these are absolutely important issues. And I'm glad that you brought up the ADUs, and I have my notes here. I was just taking a look at, and regarding the ADUs, some of the things that we have within our city, I mean, taking a look at different policies, and also when we're tackling the affordable housing issue and also homelessness, I think it's important to address things that we can change immediately. And that's one of them is the RV parking. And I'll note that you're in Santa Cruz, right, Rick? I believe you're in Santa Cruz. Yep. Actually, both of our guest speakers, I think, are in the Bay Area. It's sort of, I guess, kind of Bay, but Santa Cruz-ish. It's like kind of neighbors, maybe, well, compared to us. But with that, I think it's important that we take a look at other cities, other counties, and what you're doing, and having that discussion now. And maybe these are some of the type of things that we can adopt. And other things that we can adopt are some of those solutions with ADUs as well, like the granny flats, right? And having it more affordable to, allowing this to happen, and affordable to make this possible in terms of the, I'm trying to think of the permits. Permits can prevent the permit costs, because here within our city, the permits can get as costly as $18,000. That's a lot of dough. And that's not even a cost to even build it, right? So we need to address that and make it more affordable. So a lot of these families, when I've been out meeting with different voters and talking to different voters by phone or by just here in the community, I've talked to many families where, there's 2 families under one roof, and even 3 families under one roof in an apartment, because it's tough times. And California is an expensive place to live. And along with that, we can also address things like our RV parking and making that less restrictive, because right now we're not able to have anybody inside of an RV. You can park it, but you can't be inside an RV and live in it more than 3 days at a time. And I personally know people that have had tough times, and they found themselves homeless, and their family members live in Vista, and they park their RV in front of their home, the mother's home, their in-laws' home, and they've been fined several times with the city. And many of these, their families with children. And these are things I think that we can do better at, and build a better Vista. And these are the things I think we can address, along with building not another Vista, but a better Vista. I think let's definitely talk about how we can do that, and that's through grants. And Sedale, that's where you come in. And actually, we met on a project that was a grant project, right?
Yes, we did. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. It was really cool. We got to that project's actually, there's some really cool things coming to pass there, and it wasn't necessarily, or it wasn't really focused on housing at all, but it was really focused on creating jobs and building a community around the opportunity that's offered here in California. As you see more and more people transitioning into these sort of knowledge jobs, as well as jobs that involve more clean energy, clean technologies, and those kind of things. So that was really cool. But I really like the fact that you brought up the housing issue, as well as just the fact that these are tough times, and it's really interesting so at Open Grants, what we do is connect people to grant funding and make this process more streamlined. And there's a lot of opportunity. Of course, I'm really happy to hear that one of the things that you're thinking of focusing on or working on is the permitting issue. Is once again there's a lot of really neat opportunities to collaborate with the government, but frequently one of the issues that pops up is that there's so much bureaucracy and so much bad process or just overbuilt process in government that people find it hard to access or hard to leverage government as a ally as they're working on fixing these issues in the community. And so Open Grants works a lot on streamlining and fixing that process when you're accessing grant funding, which is plentiful. And it's nuts to think about. I've talked to probably a couple hundred grant writers in the last few months, and they are inundated with housing and urban development grants. There's a lot of work going on in that space because there are billions available to not only revitalize communities that are struggling, to revitalize what's designated as distressed housing projects, to deploy new projects, and also there's funding for planning, which is really important. Yes. When you're thinking about urban development and putting these projects together, to do a thorough job to plan how does this impact communities, how does this impact everything from traffic to jobs to the environment. There's a lot of things to consider when you're building these projects, and that costs money. When you hire experts to go do that costs money, and there's a lot of grant funding available. And what we're seeing right now at Open Grants is that there are a lot of the grant writers we talk to are frankly 5 or 6 months booked out. They're just in it. And it's on the one side of the coin, it's really cool to see that that money is being applied for and it's being deployed, but it is also it does also make you think just about like the level of need and what's currently happening in our nation, where you're seeing the economic impacts of COVID-19 and the pandemic really starting to people are becoming homeless. There's a lot of issues with people accessing benefits and continuing to be able to work in their jobs. So certainly a great resource there with the government. And, we, encourage everyone to think about ways that they can better engage the government, both federal, state, and local, as an ally, because there are a lot of great people working in government, yourself included, of course. Lots of great folks working in government to do good things. And a lot of times they just need to know, who to talk to. Or they need to know what to work on. And because for so long there's been not an adversarial relationship, but maybe a bit of a distance between the public sector and just sort of the general citizens who are out there trying to live their lives. I really do applaud you for doing these kind of like fireside chats and other things, because it's important to let people know that the government is there to be an asset. And regardless of what you see in the media, there's a lot of really good people trying to do a lot of really good things, and there's certainly a lot of money available. So go talk to these people and listen to what they have to say and how they want to help you, because they frequently can do a lot.
Right. No, it's important, and it's important to streamline this and to get that information out there. And that's what I believe your technology does. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, Liz, if I can make a footnote to all those comments, I want to make a
Sure.
comment that Vista has taken one very good step forward in that they will waiver the fees. However, some other cities, such as the city of Seaside, Salinas, have actually prepared the entire architectural package. So if someone was interested in building an ADU on their property, the city will give them the construction drawings. They would give them a discount on the fees, and in some cases, based on economic status, they would remove the fees altogether, giving that family an opportunity, or that senior an opportunity, to build a little faster. other communities such as City of Santa Cruz and County of Santa Cruz, and of course we have huge fires up here where similar events are occurring. They're actually lending money to families to initiate it, basically to short circuit the delay. What we found a few years ago, once it was issued, no one really responded because the unit cost about $300,000, the fees cost about $40,000, and then the water district came along and wanted the full rate on the water meter. But since these other elements have been implemented, we've seen some progress. So this has taken the first step. Maybe now the second step is to build a really strong web page and put all the little nuances that are required to build, such as what a construction budget might look like, what banks are doing to help, and what grants, going back to the earlier comment, is available to them. So,
right, and having that information
is already done a little bit.
Yeah, yep, and actually having that information on one in one area, and then being able to market it. And I wanted. Thank you for saying that, Rick. And there's a lot of different changes that are happening due to COVID, and I believe Sedale's right that we're going to see more of this need, right, as we progress. And then the news of it, also a second stage of COVID happening later in this season, and also riding into the winter. I think it's important that we get ahead of that and not be reactive, but proactive in that sense. And part of that proactiveness, and I want to put this back over to Sedale, is, taking a look at your technology. How can your technology help? Can you describe a little bit about that, and what is your technology exactly trying to solve? What problem is it trying to solve, and how you got in this space?
Yeah, so I guess I'll answer the last question first. I spent some time working with some of the most brilliant minds in kind of public funding and public funding strategy at a company called Momentum, formerly called Grant Farm. And I watched the machinations and all of the different things that they did to be successful. But one of the things that I was fascinated by is just the level of just how dense the bureaucracy was in terms of navigating these funding programs. They were very focused on clean energy and clean technology, which was great, and is a super interesting space. But when you look at the expansive nature of what the government funds, and then look at how little of that seems accessible to just the average citizen. So thinking about the ADUs, for example, how many people know that the Cal Home Disaster Assistance is available, and they could use that to put in ADUs and help support them as they try to move through navigating, maybe trying to pay their mortgage, navigating dealing with COVID, navigating fires, recovery, all that stuff. How does anyone know that this even exists? And the answer for a long time has been, well, if you are an insider, or if you happen to one day run into somebody from that department who's out speaking with the community, or maybe you were had the savvy to Google some things and get on a listserv, and you managed to navigate a really confusing government website. But by and large, a lot of people don't know that it exists, unfortunately. And so the reason we built Open Grants, first and foremost, is it is the most complete data set of grant funding in the United States. So it encompasses everything from federal to state to local funding. And we used a variety of machine learning and computer vision to actually translate all of that data out there into, really readable, legible information that makes sense to the average, person who hasn't spent their life reading the CFR and digging through a bunch of, government documentation. And so, with Open Grants, we hope to not only be a single source of truth when it comes to government funding, but to really democratize the process so that, say you are working on a project, and we encourage this. If you're working on a project related to recovery, or you're deploying an ADU or something along those lines, go over to opengrants.io. It's free to get started. Hop in there and look what's available, because for fun, I did a search right before we got on this call, and I found about 50 different grants for, housing and urban development and all those different things. And so, and that was just, typing. All I did was type in housing, and then I typed in ADUs. So there's a ton of opportunity, and this brings me back to kind of my earlier point too, is, the government is full of great people. I've had a wonderful time working and interfacing with government agencies, federal, state, local, and I've always appreciated the folks who are really, they really are civil servants. They're trying to do something good for their community, trying to build something better. They're being, they're being a active kind of member of the community. They're trying to get out there and serve, but they don't have the tools they need to understand everyone's needs. They're just one person, and the state of California is massive. There's a lot of people out there with a lot of different needs and a lot of different interests. So using modern technology, our vision with Open Grants really is to knit together not only all the information in a single place, but to allow the stakeholders, the citizens of California, of the nation, to give us feedback about what kind of information they're looking for, and for us to be able to translate that in aggregate back up to our friends in the government and say, hey, look, your constituents are looking for these kind of things. This is what they're looking to get funded, so that on the government side, the government can efficiently deploy capital to really support, the very real needs of their people, and they can engage their citizens in a modern way instead of, right now the best tools they have are probably like a mix of Twitter and listservs and,
Right.
reaching out to, specific groups. So that's, in a nutshell, we're here to bridge that gap to ensure that the citizens of the United States can really rely on the government as a partner in navigating economic recovery, in navigating innovation, in navigating housing, and navigating homelessness. There's all kinds of programs out there, and frankly, what we've seen is that for by and large, unless you know somebody or you are really plugged into that space, you're not really going to know what's available, and it takes a lot of time and energy and effort, or resources. You can always pay someone who could tell you. And so we built Open Grants to help speed along that process and make it accessible to everyone.
That is a wonderful explanation, and thank you. And I think it's so important. I know our behind the scenes producer, Laura, if you don't mind sharing opengrants.io. That's the website there, but maybe just have that information. That way it's handy to the public. And I think this is definitely information that should be shared. So you talked a lot about on the outside regarding how that can share, but can you maybe describe how it can be utilized within government, how it can help cities and counties and state?
Yeah, of course. So, the other, flipping the conversation around, you have these people who get saddled with this job, right? So, you come in and your job is to deploy funds to support, housing and help, reduce homelessness in your city. So where do you start? Maybe you have some statistics you can look at. Maybe if you're really lucky, you have some kind of tool to go out and talk to people. You have and hopefully some staff to go out and maybe do some surveys, but there's no really operationalized data sets or real good tools to go out and understand really what's going on in a large community. And the cool thing about Open Grants is what we've done is on the front end, by engaging these folks who are looking for funding, by engaging community members and having them let us know what they're looking for via search, via the actual outreach and chat, we can help governments not only understand what their stakeholders need, but also we can help them deploy capital quickly and efficiently. So that's another part of the equation. And that just comes down to the bureaucracy where, we still have people in the United States who haven't gotten their stimulus checks yet. There's still people who haven't received money from the federal government, which is crazy when you think about it, because we live in the age of the internet. Like, I haven't gone to a bank in months, and that's not just because of the pandemic. I literally just open my phone and do all of my banking right here. Maybe I log into my laptop to do that, but it's mind blowing to see that with the right tools, they could be out there getting that money to the right people right away, quickly and efficiently. but they just don't have those tools. And so Open Grants has the modules not only to understand the stakeholders and to engage them, but also to deploy capital across our own infrastructure. It's something that we saw happen with the stimulus checks and an upstart, a new bank called Chime. I don't know if you saw this story or heard about it, but Chime is one of the neo banks, as they call them, the new banks. There's no like physical infrastructure, right? It's all digital. But what Chime did is they said, hey, U.S. government, we have X amount of users, and they all are ready to receive direct deposits for their stimulus checks. And so all of these users on Chime got their stimulus checks weeks before everyone else, because the federal government said, oh, great, let's give you this money and you distribute it to all these people. And because as a bank you have to do all of your KYC compliance, they knew exactly who they were giving the money to. They knew how to do it quickly and efficiently. And that's a great example of how modern tools can help improve the citizen experience, turn the government into more of an ally, make you as a bureaucrat look better, be more of a servant, instead of saying, hey, you might get your check, you might not. We did our best to cut all these checks and we mailed them. And not to disparage the mail service, but it is slower than direct deposit. So and people need this money. There's people who are out of jobs who are literally becoming homeless because they don't have the stimulus money that they need. And so it's about, at Open Grants, it's all about empowering our civil servants, empowering the government to be able to serve the citizens, and at the same time empowering the citizens to be able to connect. And it is literally a data layer that allows for everything from those transactions to the exchange of information to happen in a much more efficient and equitable and transparent way, so that you have services being delivered and on par with what you'd expect in the modern world.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that on the equitable piece, because that's certainly important. And the thing I love about your technology is not only does it help with the nonprofits of the world, right, and the for-profits, like how we met, my company, and taking a look at clean energy solutions, and working with Momentum on the San Diego Port Authority project, the electrification of the port. There's just a lot of opportunity for small businesses to create jobs. And I wanted to also and with Rick still there, of course, and I didn't forget about you, Rick, because you have so much to say in regards to all of the work you've done your past years regarding how to integrate a lot of the issues that we have and integrate them in a way that there are solutions. So taking a look at affordable housing, how can we holistically put this whole piece together? So there's affordable housing, but you can also grow the economy, growing our local workforce and small businesses. Can you talk a little bit about, and then most importantly, addressing climate. So can you talk a little bit about that, and maybe one of your notable projects that you've done regarding grants and that encompass all of those, all the above?
Yes, I'm going to go into a little bit of a tangent here so it makes sense. Obviously, we're talking about small governments. We're talking about local governments pulling together resources to address these issues that we're talking about. But the problem today is we have so little money available, unlike what we had years ago under the redevelopment days, where there could be an increment financing device that could raise money to create economic development offices, technology offices, and etc. The governor does the best they can with a thing called the Resource and Development Office. But there's an opportunity, and often we don't see it, and that's in the community colleges. Often in the community colleges, they have SBA preparation, they have SCORE programs and so forth. So if the city reached out and partnered up with the community college, maybe even taking young students and turning them into interns, they could probably create a technology office or a economic development office, and then that could lead to outreach let's say a veteran who just left the service, and outreach to someone like that and guide them into, now comes the short list of technology. So obviously we're moving towards solar. In the city of Santa Cruz, they have now eliminated all natural gas to all new construction except for restaurants. They are promoting not only electrical, but they're really promoting solar. There's a really interesting gentleman who pioneered what's called a passive house. It's a house that is basically energy efficient. These homes started in Germany. They're now in California. And basically, you can operate a home with less than $100 worth of utilities. So, but to do that, you need to pull together, so to speak, a spokesperson or an advocate for the city. So cities should look at themselves as coordinators and creators of opportunity, and not necessarily feel they can't do something because they don't have necessarily a budget or a particular staff member and so forth. If we could get a bunch of land use planners together and planning directors and public works directors, you will hear them constantly say we're overworked. Every time there's a new idea, they give it to us, but they don't give us more staff. They don't give us more technology. And on your terms, I say this, the simple internet, a decent internet system. So, but there are some interesting technologies that are evolving, and we read about them all the time. They're reported constantly in the paper, but most communities really don't take the initiative to capture them and bring them in their community. A town, a city of the future like Vista is in the prime place to do a little bit of what I'm describing. And we have communities that have made a real strong effort to do it, but it all came through strong leadership from their city council. It is always top down. You can't expect the staff to come up with all the ideas and say to their council, here's the solution. It is the council that needs to go out and do the research and bring the ideas in and bring the appropriate consultants and bring the appropriate workshops and everything else that triggers new ideas. Recently, my partner and I, Eric Jacobson, we were introduced to a company that's bringing in short distance internet. And the thought is to really capture the gap where we have no internet. Now here I live in Santa Cruz. I'm next to Silicon Valley. We look at ourselves as an extension of Silicon Valley. But if you come up into our mountains, and unfortunately you may have heard of our fire where we lost almost 1,000 homes.
Yes.
If you come up into that area, little or no real internet. So even in a rich place like where we live in terms of technology, we need that kind of help. We've relied way too often on cable corporations, however they come, whether it's phone, whether it's TV, to provide internet. And there's other alternatives. But how does it start? It often starts on the city council. The city council has to agree that these technologies can come into their community, that they could allow special use permits to be issued, and in essence, not use the zoning code to keep from expanding. Anyway, this could go on forever. I'll stop here, but hopefully that triggers some thought.
I love that. I love that. And in regards to everything that you just said, and it is, you're absolutely right. It does matter who you have as part of your leadership and bringing in that creativity. Absolutely. And who has that knowledge and has done the homework and research regarding tackling these very important issues. That's absolutely important. And one of the things I wanted to ask you too, in regards to integrating all of this, I mean, do you mind telling me, I mean, maybe you mentioned it, but do you have a notable project that maybe you have worked on? And you mentioned, it sounds like possibly municipality type of structure of Wi-Fi or that sort of thing. And I don't know, just kind of throwing out some ideas, but maybe you can talk a little bit more about that, Rick.
Yes. Unfortunately, when you become as old as I am, you have a lot of little parts in your past. So for a while, I had another privilege to be in a partnership where we expanded cell phone system as they were evolving in California. So that's 15, 20 years ago. But with that experience, we were able to, or I was able to meet people that really have great technology ideas, but they lack money and they lack political support. And so those ideas just kind of linger on. Right now, we're working with this potential deliverer of the internet using a very simple antenna system. Um, and basically, he brings the source to a particular group of antennas, which is at a fairly high level, height that is, and then disperses it in neighborhoods where there's little or no internet. This is very important. You hear it every day. This is very important for young kids who are trying to get through school at home. The other thing that we are dabbling with, and our primary interest right now, is senior living, providing housing for folks. I'm actually sitting in a company or in a facility in our company called Westwind Memory Care. We serve the assisted living care for people with dementia and Alzheimer's. We are, I go back to my partner and so forth, we are looking at a new concept of what we're calling co-community housing, similar to co-housing. In this case, creating a solid suite scenario where maybe 4 or 6 seniors can share the same kitchen, the same living room, but yet have their private bedroom, bath as such, and create it much like you would expect a high resort hotel to function or even look like. This is on the horizon, but we already know there's a need for immediate care and housing for seniors. We start at 55, but when you start meeting people in their late 50s and 70s, they haven't always had the best of times, and we don't have a safety net for them. In fact, in California, it's outrageous. Other states allow Medicare to cover some of these expenses, but not in California. It's almost always private pay or an extreme economic situation where the state steps in and helps you.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned the seniors and regarding seniors and our population of veteran seniors. I threw the statistic out there before. The population of veterans in our state as a whole, 60% of that population belong to seniors, elders. And so we do absolutely have to take care of our veteran elders. And there is a lot of grant funding for sure that is available that I'm aware of, especially being former deputy secretary at Calvet. I know there was, again, even that funding. But I want to kind of shift things a bit. And thank you for mentioning that. It doesn't have to be an ISOR, affordable housing, even transitional housing that addresses the homelessness issue. But it could be just absolutely gorgeous, right? We can make it kind of resort living in some sense. I have some amazing ideas that I would love to see and make it more of a community project. And there's a lot of ways we can do that. So I'm seeing a lot of questions here from the audience, and I think we could shift it. But what I am seeing is how can our community get involved? And I think the first thing that comes out to me is taking a look at definitely sharing this information, sharing the grants, and having a web page of some sense. And this is something I can do on my web page now, is share the different opportunities that are out there. Like Sedale had mentioned, there are different grants, and I think sharing Sedale's website is one of those ways. And then any grant opportunities that exist now, which actually I can share what you had shared with me, Rick. There's a lot of affordable housing funding that's in what this says in the next 12 months that is set aside. Yes, we are in COVID times. However, how government funding does work is that it's allocated in advance in advance, and some of these, some of the fundings can go a year, 2 years, even 5 years out, depending on what the situation is. So I think it's important to share that information, and I could do that on my website for sure. I think that's a start, but once elected, this will become the norm, because this is how we're going to build a better Vista, a Vista for the future, and also a smart city. Taking a look at that, and let's see. Do you have any other
I'm
ideas
sorry,
how
I
our
have
community can get?
I have a thought for you.
Okay.
How can you get involved? And of course, I mentioned I am active with Habitat for Humanity, and what I want to bring to your attention is Habitat for Humanity succeeds because volunteers come and help build something. And that's a structured organization, but a community could probably create its own, so to speak, core of citizens who come and volunteer to help solve a particular problem. Maybe it's to help someone build an ADU. Maybe it's to paint somebody's house, or maybe it is to sit in a library and read to children. But it could be a precise organization that the city creates and the community supports.
I love that. And actually, I was on the phone with some voters earlier today, and I had a lot of ideas given to me. And that's actually what one of the voters had suggested. Why doesn't the city of Vista create a nonprofit and have its own community outreach there? I don't believe that exists. I'm not going to say no, but I'm not sure if that exists, but that is definitely one way we can build a better Vista and have our community more involved that can tackle a lot of these things. And, you know, in regards to homelessness, and we're talking workforce development, but even providing opportunities that, I'm trying to remember exactly what it's called, but it helps veterans kind of integrate back into our civilian lives. And I was thinking of maybe even kind of stealing some of their program ideas a bit. I'm going to be honest, that's why I'm putting it out there. They're based out of Orange County, and I think it's workforce for warriors, or some wardrobe for warriors. But basically, that program helps veterans integrate back into civilian life by showing them how to dress in a business suit. When I was in the Navy, I didn't even know I never even put my hair down. Honestly, I was always in a bun of some sort. and what I'm getting at is that helping people that are tackling or dealing with homelessness get back into the workforce. And I had to learn how to dress and do the interviews and such. And so I think this is important that we also provide that, or as a community, we can come together to help those that are in need in that sense. And we can also build that. We can also build infrastructures too to combat homelessness as well.
So if I could give a shout out, you know, that old term, here in Santa Cruz, we had a wonderful nonprofit called Bridging Warriors. And
What is it called? I didn't.
The Bridging Warriors. And
Okay.
it was the CIS veterans who were having serious health and psychological issues. And what they did is they brought in non-veteran individuals who are interested in assisting. Some of them were psychiatrists, believe it or not. They had a yoga instructor. They brought in a group of people who were concentrating on peaceful activities. You know, our town has had some exciting moments, and we try to forget those days, but we've had our share of them. But anyway, a community like yours could do something very similar. And basically, you don't put a structure around the nonprofit. You let the veteran come in, discover what that person needs, then go out in the community and find the support that moves that individual forward. So it starts off with housing, as you know, and you have a lot of knowledge of this. Veterans often start as homeless people as they leave the branches. They try to go home. They often don't return to their own community. They go into a new community, maybe school works, maybe it doesn't, and next thing you know, they're on the street. And our story earlier of a church trying to build a homeless village is mostly focusing on veterans who have had some real misfortunes in life. But this group makes an effort. So there's a name for you, and also a rough concept of how any community can help veterans within their community.
Right. And I'm glad you brought up that personal point too, that I struggle with. And this is a big, I would say, issue that I want to address, and a passion of mine, because as a veteran that was a part of the statistic of experiencing homelessness, and as a single mom and 5 months pregnant, as a single mom dealing with that, and had a 6-year-old at the time, there weren't places I could go to. There weren't facilities for women, and then also women with children. And fast forward 12 and a half years later, that is still an issue. So what we need to do is really focus as leaders and really get into the weeds and really take a focus on trying to address these issues. And a lot of it is going to be community effort, community involvement. I know we talked about a lot of things. And with all this knowledge, we're only days away from Election Day. And I'm just so excited to just get in there. I'm ready, taking a look at where I want to tackle first, and, kind of putting it down in a number scale. This is number 1, 2, and on to, 10. But, I wanted to answer a couple more questions, maybe a question or two. It was saying, is funding for Vista allocated? Funding for Vista allocated? Well, there is some funding that is available. I know that the city of Vista, they did a homelessness count, and that's actually with the county. And those numbers are not always the most accurate. It doesn't capture everybody. I know that there is a plan to try to combat homelessness, but it's kind of I just think that we can do better. And I'm just going to leave it at that. And part of that doing things better is what we're describing today. And it's not the typical solution that we've heard in the past or we've seen in the past. But again, building a better Vista, a stronger Vista, and along with that, addressing issues that are so needed to be addressed, and it's overdue. And we can also build our economy while we're at it and create jobs. So yes, we definitely need to do this. I want to see if there's any more and actually any closing remarks from Sedale or Rick. And I would say go ahead and shoot away. But I think we've answered pretty much all the questions, because most of them was a lot of folks are just reaching out saying how they can get involved. And is Vista going to be a Silicon Valley area? What I would love to see Vista be a part of that Made in America piece, and be a part of that hub for our nation to ensure that I think what we've learned from COVID is that there are gaps in our logistics system, and we can definitely address that here. We have a Vista Business Park that's combined, that kind of hugs the Tri-City area, which is Oceanside, Carlsbad, and we have the largest bases right here in San Diego County in our nation. So absolutely, we can bring back Made in America. I'm an 80s kid, so I like that. I remember that was a big deal. And we can definitely make that. It is a big deal, but look where we're at. 2020 is different times. We're voting for leadership and experienced leadership, and leadership that's proven and that can make things happen. And so having that out of the box thinking, that creative government solutions thinking, and all that we've been talking about is a part of that, and thinking of it holistically, that involves community and involves community engagement. Because I know this is what Vista is absolutely hungry for. And on that note, ending on that note, just closing remarks, gentlemen.
I'll just say thank you first for inviting me on. this evening. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. And I just want to close with maybe along the lines of what you were saying of, the future and everything that's happening. One of the really interesting things and one of the wonderful things about working with Open Grants is I've been able to engage with the Academy Investor Network, which is a group of VCs, so venture capitalists, who are investing in startups that are run by veterans coming out of the military academies. And I'll just say that, when you talk about is funding allocated for Vista, another question to ask is, or to think about, is just how much funding is allocated to cities and to economic development. And I think that it's really great that, Liz, that you're engaged in this process, because I think you're fully aware, or and you have the wherewithal to reach out and talk to folks who are aware of the vast amount of resources that are available to not only help you move initiatives forward, but also to empower the citizens and change makers and folks in your community. And so that's the kind of leader that we need in communities across the United States, is not the folks who are just going to like sit down and be shut down and say, all right, it's just us against the world, but people who have the wherewithal to reach out and say, okay, there's all these resources we can bring to bear to make things better. And so I think that's really important. So anyways, yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Well, I do want to thank you for inviting me. And, we seldom get an opportunity to have these kinds of conversations. But I'm hoping, however it turns out for you, Elizabeth, that maybe you could be the mover and shaker that creates a Vista think tank, a Vista version of TED Talks, and bring
I love it. Oh my gosh.
Subjects together. Maybe it's an event that occurs monthly. And, obviously I lived in San Diego. In fact, I was born in San Diego. My dad was career Navy. So I know what's in your town and in your community. And there is some very, very rich minds living in San Diego. Absolutely. So you don't have to go far to really make this exciting, and maybe direct it to your city with the idea of more community participation. We're a little burned out as communities, but we all want to do something. Maybe this is a way to revive it. And then in turn, you might discover some clever solutions that you use in Vista and share with other communities, starting with Santa Cruz.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We can totally do this. We're such a young city. The average age here, the median age is, it's actually 30, I want to say 33, 34, if I'm correct. So in the age group is 26 to 35. That's the largest. I mean, it's a young city. We need young people. They're hungry. Well, we need young people, but young leadership, community leaders getting involved. We need to listen to them, involve them. They want the change. We want the change, positive change. And that's going to not only address the young families, but also future generations like our children. And this is absolutely needed. So I'm so glad that you came to this discussion and you shared your thoughts, ideas. And I just really hope, we have more of this, right? And I do plan, not to sound overly confident, on winning. And so moving forward, there's not if, there is. And so, moving forward with that is, having that plan. And thank you so much again, gentlemen. And I just want to thank all the viewers, and please share this conversation. I know it's a little long, but please share it and get the word out that yes, Vista is hungry for creativity. I think we all kind of get that. I'm hearing this from voters. As I talk to voters, I'm seeing this on social media. We can't continue the norm, what has happened in the past. We must have a movement towards a positive change and building that better Vista. And with that, closing out, thank you again. This is our last town hall until election night, November 3rd. Do not forget to vote. November 3rd, days away. Don't forget to vote. And Vista, vote Perez. Thank you.